Welcome back, everybody, to the Thriving Wabash County podcast. My name is Alex Downard, one of the co-hosts of the show, and today I am joined in the studio with two guests. Conner Hindman, the director of Imagine 185. Conner's been on the podcast before. If you've heard the fellowship program episode, I think that was your debut, wasn't it, Conner?
I was going to say, I was just telling James, it was actually the day before I started, so it's still technically an intern.
So back in the intern days. So
Yeah.
this is your first time on the podcast as an employee and the director of Imagine
Yeah,
185.
about 8 months now.
Welcome to
since
the
then.
W-2 full-time
That's right.
full-time world. And then our second guest in the studio today is James Davis, the founder, owner, president, CEO, whatever his official title is, of Creedence Contracting.
Yeah, just the guy with all the crazy ideas, but
And
yeah.
the great swag. If
Yeah.
anybody's watching on our video, you'll see the Creedence hat, the Creedence hoodie, which we'll get into some of your branding and your logo and where
Right.
all that comes from in the show. But I made a comment to James before we started airing that if he would have brought Conner and I each a Creedence Contracting hat, we would have worn the hat, even with our dress shirts.
Well, now I'm gonna get you one. I'm gonna expect you to wear it around town now. So
You'll see us riding around in the Creedence
On
Contracting.
your-
I would've
on your
wore a
tandem
hard
bicycle?
hat, even if you brought me.
On our tandem bicycle. That's right. As we pull up to a job site, we'll have our matching hats on.
yes, I love it. Well, I'm truly thankful and honored to be here today. So I'm excited. I have no idea what I'm gonna get asked nor what I'm gonna say. So this is 100% off the cuff, authentic. So I'm excited to dive into it.
Don't be timid. If you're a prospective guest or you're planning to be on the podcast, my other two co-hosts typically prepare a lot better
Right.
than I do, and you provide a lot of questions, which for some guests, I too will put questions together ahead of time and make sure that guests have them. But I know how confident and comfortable you are, just
Right.
how authentic talking about Creedence Contracting in your story. So I figured today we would let it roll. We prepared some questions here that we may ask you. But first and foremost, for our listener, I think that it would be hard for them, at least our listeners in Wabash County, who haven't seen your billboard on State Road 13, who haven't seen your building and the branding as they're driving on 114 through North Manchester, or probably the majority of our listeners have seen all of your social media and branding on Facebook. But just in case they haven't seen any of that, or they've only seen parts of that, who is James Davis, and maybe a little bit of how your journey of getting to Creedence Contracting?
Wow. So first and foremost, I am just so blessed that first and foremost, James Davis, I love the Lord. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about him today. So let's just get that right off the bat. But I am just so blessed to have been given the opportunity to not only be an entrepreneur. I mean, I go back into my childhood and I'm not going to bore you guys with the details, but everything in my life kind of pointed me in the direction of entrepreneurship, from, being 10 years old and older, walking door to door, mowing lawns, shoveling sidewalks, raking leaves. My stepdad was a pastor, so I grew up from a middle to lower income family. And so I always just had this desire to figure out a way to go out and earn a little extra money to be able to buy all the stuff my friends had. My friends had a moped. I needed a moped. My friends had a dirt bike. I wanted a dirt bike. And bless my mom's heart, she was able to give us everything that we needed. But I learned a work ethic from a very young age to be self-sufficient in earning money. So I've had an entrepreneurial mindset ever since I can remember. And over the years, through God's sovereignty and my testimony, it has allowed me to own a contracting business. And believe it or not, I never thought that I would own a construction company, not until I think it was my junior year of high school. I wanted to be a commercial pilot. I'm an airplane freak. Like, I love airplanes. I've always been a nerd when it comes to airplanes. But my junior year, I was kind of, school and textbook was never my thing. Like I said, I liked mowing lawns, getting my hands dirty. So bookwork was never my thing. And I had the opportunity my junior year to get into building trades. And I did it not because I had a huge interest in construction, just because I thought, I was like, hey, I get out of class and get to go build stuff. Why not? And sucked me right in. And I've been doing it ever since. I spent several years as a sole proprietor, kind of just working for several different contractors from Indianapolis all the way to Lansing, Michigan. And 5 years ago, I came back from Michigan and had this bright idea. Well, my dad and I had a bright idea to start a construction company. And I mean, the Lord has just used it to bless so many people and to bless me. And it has grown further and more than I could have ever expected or imagined. And that's just a living testimony for me that that God has had a hand in it, because by myself, trust me, I am less than capable. God has brought the right people along the way to help me, to believe in me. And really his hand and his handiwork has been in it since the very beginning. And when I say since the very beginning, I mean, we're 5 years old, but I still feel like we're just at the beginning of the plans that we have to use this construction company to truly make a difference. That's my heart. You know, construction is just the avenue, but really it's become so much more than that. And the people that know me and my wife and our family and know the guys that work for Creedence, yeah, we love construction, but we love people more, and we love the Lord even more than that. And so God has definitely used this to start something awesome. And we are just beginning. We have huge plans, huge changes. We're constantly growing. We're constantly adapting. But for me, I'm just a guy that is a go-getter. I'm just a guy that has bright ideas. And then outside of that, it's all been the Lord bringing the right people into my life at the right time, and great carpenters, great men of God who work alongside of me. And with all those variables combined, it's turned into something pretty cool. And it's Creedence Contracting. I'm excited to share more about it today.
Well, there you go. Everybody knows why I didn't send you any questions ahead of time. There's the episode right there. No,
Yeah.
we're really excited, James. There's so much there to unpack that we're going to dive deeper into.
For sure, and I'm excited to do so.
But I'll just tell you, the passion and your energy, people can already hear that. And so buckle up for the listener for the next 45 minutes to an hour here as we get into the podcast episode to uncover more of that. But thank you for that introduction.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
that's fantastic. Let's go way back to the beginning.
Let's do
So
it.
growing up, 10 years old, wanting to buy a moped, need to make money to buy a moped, start mowing lawns.
Yeah.
You using your family lawnmower? Do you save up enough money to buy a lawnmower? Back in those days, how much were you charging to mow somebody?
My mom, she is such a saint, and trust me when I say she has been such a blessing to me, just for the mere fact that she's put up with me. She helped me. So starting out, I didn't start out just mowing lawns. I think the earliest things that I can remember was raking leaves. And I used my parents' rakes, and I remember shoveling sidewalks, and I'd use my parents' shovels, and it started from there. As far as my first mower, it was a push mower by any means. I wasn't blessed with a zero turn. And so I don't remember exactly how I acquired them, but I'm making a pretty safe assumption that it was my mom's. And so I started walking around asking people door to door. I mean, it's snowing. Dude, there could be like half an inch to an inch of snow on the ground, and I was knocking door to door. People are like, dude, I don't need my shovel set. I'm like, come on, $10, you know, just trying to do everything I could to make money. And yeah, so as far as that kind of transpired into being able to save money and then to buy my own equipment. I remember being a freshman in high school. My first business, which my first unofficial business, was called Yard Art Creations. And so,
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Yard
Art
Creations.
Yeah, Yard Art Creations. That is like, yeah, that was like the first business entity that I mustered
So
in
your
my
marketing brain as a 10-year-old is already going to work.
Well, that was past 10 years. So 10 years old, that's when I really started, you know, raking and shoveling. And then, you know, 7th and 8th grade, I started mowing. And then my freshman year of high school, I booked out with side jobs. No, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but my freshman year of high school, I got into landscaping. There was a couple different accounts. I started doing mowing accounts, and I saved money. I had my freshman or sophomore year, I was able, as soon as I got my license, really was the start of the timeline when I started really buying equipment. But I had a 1.2 zero turns. I had snowblower, a truck, a trailer.
As a high schooler.
As a high schooler,
And this is Yard Art Creations.
Yard Art Creations, yeah.
Okay. Does that entity still exist?
No.
Okay.
That's because construction kind of grabbed me right by the boo-boo in my junior year, and I couldn't get away from it. And in fact, I wanted to do hardscaping, not like planting flowers or mulching, but I wanted to do hardscaping, like the erection of outdoor structures, ponds, bridges, decks, paver patios. That was kind of my vision, yard art. But of course, with my ability to communicate and the connections I already had made through my side jobs per se, once people caught wind that I knew how to do a little bit of building, was the majority of my calls. And there was a point where I was doing mostly construction and the hardscaping Yard Art Creations was fading out, and they almost were, I was almost fighting to hold on to something that wasn't working. And so that's when I finally threw my white flag and decided I'll just go all in for construction, and haven't got out of it.
Up until this point, are you a one-man crew? Do you have other guys, your buddies that you're paying to help you with the work?
Oh, no, I I had other friends, especially in high school. Before that, it was my siblings. I remember my sisters helping me rake leaves. Of course, they always made me do most of the work and split the money evenly. That's how that sibling stuff works. But in high school, I remember walking door. One of my buddies, Sam Rhodes, we did a lot of walking around together. And then when I got in my license and I started, buying mowers and buying equipment, there was a couple friends who came in and out helping me, but they were all pretty short lived. I was pretty gung ho, ready to go, and rain, shine, snow, it didn't matter. I was trying to figure out some way to get out there and do something.
So our listeners can probably pick up that, James, you don't know a stranger today.
No, I don't.
Do you think that was a skill that was developed by going door to door as a 10-year-old and through high school, or have you always been that way, born that way?
No, I don't know if I was born that way. So let's dive back a little bit deeper into who I am. I was a pastor's kid from a toddler, and my stepdad was a pastor of a Methodist church, and every 2 years we got relocated to a new church. So
So where were you born?
I was born in Fort Wayne.
Okay.
But every 2 years since that, I lived in Cromwell, Washington Center, Logansport, Elwood, Pearson. I counted it up one time, and from my kindergarten through my senior year, I went to 14 different schools.
Wow.
And so my communication skills wasn't by choice. It was kind of like,
That's why you don't know a stranger. You were always having to make new
right,
friends.
right, exactly. As soon
Every
as
time you'd make a group of friends,
Yep.
you're picking
off to the next. Yeah. And trust me, I wouldn't wish that on my children or anybody else, because it was difficult. Because as soon as you start, making connections and getting comfortable with the community, we moved to a new community. But I see, again, in God's sovereignty and his promise to work all things together for his good, he used those situations, that little bit of suffering as a child, and use it to give me a skill set to be able to communicate well. And so, again, it's not because of me, it's because of God's sovereign hand over my life, and all glory goes to him. And I'm just truly humbled and blessed that he has handcrafted me into the man I've become through the good things in life and through the bad things in life, because it has molded me to be, a servant that he has a plan for and is using to do something really cool. And I'm finally to the stage with my wife and I where we're starting to see, the season of refining turn into a season of harvest, and with Creedence Contracting. And it has been so cool to see God's hand at work. Like, I could sit here and bore you guys for hours on, I don't believe in coincidences, but just how things line up time and time and time again, that no credit goes to me or anybody individually. It's just, like, for example, I'm not gonna dive too much into our new business model. Over the next 3 months, we're gonna be releasing information on our own social media page to kind of announce the direction that Creedence is going. So, can I give myself a shout out on here?
Of course.
Yeah. So if you guys don't follow Creedence Contracting on Facebook, follow us on Facebook. We have some really, really awesome changes coming, and we're going to be releasing those in March, April, and May, and then our full launch is going to be in May.
And I spelled Creedence wrong for the first few months that we were working together. So just for our listeners, it's CREEDENCE.
Yeah.
Creedence Contracting on Facebook.
Yeah. And maybe at some point I can tell you how I came up with that name.
James, for some of our listeners, there's a couple things in common that if they've listened to me on this podcast or have heard me talk in person, that they're like, man, James and Alex have a lot in common. Talk really fast being one of those things. I don't have half the energy that you have, but you have a ton of energy, which is great. But another thing, and Conner, I'm interested for you to share a little bit about this too. When I was in high school, a friend and I started Hoosier Heroes seal coating business.
Okay.
And so that was my first kind of entrepreneurial venture. We did a lot of different odds and ends jobs for my friend's dad, who owned a bunch of businesses and real estate properties. But the first business that we unofficially started was Hoosier Heroes Seal Coating. Not quite as a creative name as
Yard Art
Creations.
Yard Art.
Not quite as creative. But Conner, in the summer times growing up, you also worked out with friends and a variety of jobs.
That's right. My best friend in high school, his dad owns Shane Pickens Roofing down in Kokomo, Indiana.
Okay.
Really big roofer for Howard County and the surrounding counties. But yeah, best friend, started out in kindergarten, growing up with him. But yeah, as we excelled and got to high school was when I really started working with him at his family farm, doing stuff with his horses. But really, we were hands-on doing gutter work and working for his dad at that point. And so me and him, he said, starting out freshman year, but more so sophomore, junior year, really got into running full-time his gutter part of his business. And so from taking scrap metal to to OmniSource and scrapping it to get extra cash, or doing extra hay baling jobs and delivering hay for Shane on the side. Anything that we could do to hustle and bustle, to stay busy in between sports activities. So very similar in that aspect.
There's different things that I'm so grateful for growing up, and the experiences of, I think everybody should work blue collar growing up and work outside, work with your hands, even if it teaches you that you don't want to do that long term.
Right.
There's valuable lessons in that. But then there's a lot of folks too that get into it, realize that they have an opportunity to build a life and a career out of the work that they learned to do at a young age, right? And with additional training, which we'll get to in a second with your background. But I think another big thing that you learned going door to door and moving schools all the time, but when you're working and trying to sell yourself or a service, it's the opportunity to communicate with a customer, right? And how, no matter what industry or job people are in today, the value of learning how to talk professionally and to sell a product, to sell yourself, is a critically important thing in business today, right? So I think that's a valuable lesson too.
Yeah, I think back, I mean, it's very similar to you. I think about being a liaison between Shane, the owner, and the job that was going on as a 16-year-old. Hey, this is what's going on with your gutter. This is, we'll be back tomorrow to finish the downspouts. Those types of conversations that somebody may not be happy with, but again, as a 16-year-old, that you're having to go knock on the door in the middle of the day and explain to somebody.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a learned skill set, and it's really good, especially with kids nowadays, with the amount of technology and the amount of distraction they have, to get your kids outside and kind of encourage them to go out and do something hands-on. But it comes with, success and failure. For me, like, I'm 30 years old and I'm still learning how to communicate in a way that is not only, authentic, but that builds trust. And it really is, it's a learned behavior. And it's cool that all three of us, and the opportunity that God has given us today to be in our roles and our careers of influence and dealing with people, how all of our testimonies, our stories line up from a young age, starting that sort of skill set by getting out and going door to door and trying to make a little money. It sounds to me like that, God has a plan for everybody and from every different walk of life. And it's cool to see, just how similar positions or similar mindsets all came from the same roots.
Yeah, absolutely. So then moving on to high school.
Yeah.
So where did you go to high school?
I went to Manchester High School for
Okay.
the majority of my
Majority high
yeah.
school. So when you say you went to the building trades, was that through Manchester at that time, or was that at Heartland
It
Career
was,
Center?
it was through Manchester, but Manchester sent us to Heartland.
Okay, so Heartland Career
Career
Center,
Center, yep.
and that's where you cut your teeth in the building trades with formal training, official
Yeah,
training.
yeah. And there was no turning back after that. I actually realized that, I kind of had a natural inclination towards construction. It's not for everybody, and that's okay, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the challenge. I enjoyed the critical thinking. There's a lot of critical thinking in math and science and chemistry, and some people are wired and cut for that. But I found that I excelled the most when critical thinking came from, how to build something, to be able to see a stack of boards on the ground or a stack of materials and be able to kind of envision and see the process on the steps it takes to create something that you can physically see in front of you. It's very rewarding. And I definitely knew pretty quickly that this was something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And
Is there a project or something from that class that you could point back to that, like, specifically, man, one day we were out on the job site with 10 other guys that were in the class, and man, we did a roof, or we did a pour of concrete, as a sidewalk. Is there a job that you can specifically point back to that you're like, man, that's what got me in? That's what made me
so
happy.
actually, yeah. And it was, so the way when I went to high school, how the Career Center worked is your junior year, you're supposed to be, they have a wood shop there, and the juniors are supposed to be in the wood shop. They have, side projects that you do inside the wood shop. And then you kind of have to.
So give us an example of one of those.
Like they
just
build,
for our listeners.
yeah, they build sheds. Like
Okay.
they build sheds, which
On
is
site at Heartland,
at Heartland, yeah.
building in the wood shop.
Yeah, and you
Okay.
kind of have to earn your trust, earn your stripes in order to be trusted to be sent out onto the job site, because the Career Center builds homes one a year. And so I wanted to be, I got into the building trades. I was like, man, I want to get on a bus and go build a house. But I quickly got humbled when I went there my junior year and realized that, well, I'm just going to be stuck in this building all day building sheds, which was cool. I mean, it was still cool. Got to work with power tools and so on and so forth. But that moment that you asked me about, that moment I remembered is be and as I get older, I realize that this is something that I need to work on, because confidence is good. Overconfidence is not good, and it's gotten me into trouble several times.
Pride, like we all battle pride.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure. And I'm still working on that. My lovely wife is very good at holding me accountable to continue to work on that. I'm not perfect, never claim to be. We're all works in progress. But anyway, so back to the situation I got myself into at Heartland Career Center. I came in and we were building the shed, and the walls were built and the roof wasn't on yet. And for some reason, I got into a conversation with the teacher there on how I think the roof should be built. Never had building one, never understanding the rafter, the ridge pull. I didn't know any of that. And he's like, "Oh, well, if you're so confident, then just do it." And I'm like, okay. and truthfully, I had no idea. But here's a lesson to be learned. I said, okay. And then I did it. Looking back on how I did it, it's almost, I could almost laugh at myself by the construction engineering or the lack thereof, but it worked. And that lesson that I took away from that moment is you're never going to learn anything new unless you step outside of your comfort zone and try something for the first time. If you wait till you know how to
do everything,
then you'll always be a few steps behind. But because of that, and this is the truth, because of my overconfidence, it put me in a position where I had to perform and I had to figure it out on my own, and I made it work and I made it happen. And then after that, they sent me out to the job site. So, but that was a pretty cool experience that has stuck with me.
Conner and I use a phrase all the time: becoming comfortable by being uncomfortable. Right?
Uncomfortable,
being
yeah.
comfortable, being comfortable in moments of being uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that is the foundational principle of growth. And not only in the secular, but also in the spiritual too.
Yeah.
The Lord works by pressing you, by molding you. You can't forge a good weapon without putting it into the forge, heating it, beating it over and over, bending it, beating it, heating it. Same thing with olive. You got to press olive and work it in order to make oil. And there are several of those metaphors used in the Bible, but that goes for us too. Is God will make you more like Him. God will develop your character through seasons of trials and suffering. And so I'm a living testimony of that too, because it's definitely to be an entrepreneur in this day and age, to start a business, but not only that, but to be a Christian in this day and age, you definitely have to go through seasons of trials and suffering, but in that God bears so much fruit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
We'll continue in that conversation in a second. On the trade school though,
Yeah.
for our listeners, probably most of which are familiar with Heartland Career Center and the great opportunities that are provided there. What I think is really interesting is, Conner, you're not from Wabash County, but you too were in the building trades, and two individuals both go through the building trades.
Mm-hmm.
James, you just perfectly described how that course set the path, charted the path for what you were going to do for the rest of your life, right? And leading you to where you're at today. Conner went to the building trades class, and Conner, do you want to share a little bit about what that solidified for you and your experience?
So very similar to you, I got to my junior year of high school, and I was a senior. I was trying to have the lightest senior schedule I could possibly have, and so I wanted to do something at the Career Center. I had an older brother who actually did the Kokomo CEO program, so all about entrepreneurship and growth there. But I went to Hines Career Center that is located over in Elwood, and went out and decided to do the construction class. And it was by far the best decision I ever made. It was this teacher's second year over there, Brad Compton. I hope at some point he could hear this. He had such a big influence on my life as far as just lessons learned and how to attack every day. But man, that class really taught me a lot as far as we started out building a home in Elwood. It was a new construction. My senior year was just after COVID. I graduated 2020, 2021. So we were right in the heat of it. And we got the house fully framed, foundation poured, trusses brought in, and then construction was put on hold due to the material prices for COVID. And so then we flipped and started doing a renovation project, interesting enough, over in Frankton, Indiana. And that house was actually a property that had caught on fire, burned. And our construction teacher, he had a really good friend there. His daughter had bought the property, was wanting to renovate it, move into it. And so we did a complete gut on that, pulled out all the floor boards, everything. I mean, complete gut, redid the floor plan, new roof on it, everything. I didn't get to finish that project, just timing-wise in the year. But that class really solidified for me that, one, I love the people in that industry and the trades. but two, that I didn't want to do that type of work the rest of my life.
No, I get it, man.
I loved the concrete work. I loved being in that environment, but it wasn't something that I myself wanted to be on my hands and knees every day. But it just, you talk about God guiding your path, and I can't help but think about that very thing. As far as sitting down with Alex when I was doing my internship, or right at the beginning of, this would have been 2 years ago, last October, 2 Octobers ago, sitting down with him at North Manchester University, him asking me, looking at my resume, what are you interested in doing? You have all this experience in roofing, you did a construction class. Have you ever thought about like project management? And I was like, no, I never thought about that. But now that I look back on it, like everything in my life of working in construction, working in roofing, being that liaison, all brought me to where I am now and doing the work that I am today. And so, just very interesting.
So for our listeners, this is where you realize maybe how this group got together, the three of us, and then I want to get in specifically to Creedence's mission and all those things. But through the Imagine 185 plan, obviously housing's a big part of that. Imagine 185 is all geared around retaining residents in the county, attracting residents, creating opportunities, quality of life, quality of place in our community. And so a huge piece of that is housing, and specifically attainable housing. And so of all price points, right, from subsidized housing or emergency shelter for our most vulnerable, all the way up to executive style housing and everything in between. There's initiatives in Imagine 185 to focus on that. What we learned through that work in the first couple of years when I was leading the Imagine 185 work was that there was a gap in the housing market, right? There's gaps all throughout our housing market. We need housing inventory of all types, but specifically where we found was before a project becomes attractive to a for-profit developer, one, we don't have a ton of for-profit developers. We've got some good local developers here in Wabash County that have done a ton of great work, but we need more of that, right? And so before a project would be attractive to a for-profit developer from Fort Wayne or Indianapolis to come in and take a larger risk for inventory that they can't have at the same price point that they could in a big city, we realized there was this gap, right? And so we created, through the Imagine 185 program, the Wabash County Development Corporation, which is a housing 501c3 organization whose purpose is to set the table better for more private investment in the housing space, or two, to take on those projects that may not make sense for a for-profit developer, whether it's because there's a grant source involved or the numbers just simply don't make sense, how we can use this nonprofit organization to bring on a contracting partner and still produce housing inventory at an attainable price point in Wabash County, right? And so we created that entity. It has its own 11-member board of directors, and the Community Foundation provides staffing, investment, and some grant-making funding to that organization, the Wabash County Development Corporation. And so in Conner's role as the director of Imagine 185, he serves as the project manager for the Development Corporation as well, right? And so one of those initiatives of the Wabash County Development Corporation is what we call the Neighborhood Stabilization Initiative. Conner, do you want to give just a little bit of detail about how that works? And then we'll talk about how we found James and got involved with Creedence Contracting.
So Neighborhood Stabilization, or NSI is what we like to call it, is the Wabash County Development Corporation's it's our main priority, our main objective is to find vacant or blighted properties across Wabash County. And so we do that by using Beacon Schneider, driving up and down roads, using Google Maps. But then once we find a home, we send out an inquiry letter in the mail. We will start calling you, but really to try to negotiate a price point for that property. And so that comes into our first role as far as setting the table better for private investors or private contractors. And so once we secure price, we would then market that property out to we have a huge list of contractors and investors across Wabash County. And so once we secure that property, we would send that property information out to all of them in hopes that in a 60-day time period that we would pick up some interest. And if that property doesn't sell to a private contractor investor in that time, that is when the development corporation does step two, which is become the developer on projects or programs that don't make sense for private contractors or developers. And so that is when we would secure the purchase agreement or secure that property and then negotiate and work with a contractor like James over here to renovate that property ourselves and sell it at an affordable market rate.
So to date, the Development Corporation has moved, I believe, 7 or 8 properties total to private developers. So vacant properties that were off the market, no plan to be renovated. We were able to acquire, secure purchase agreement, work with the local developer to take that on, renovate it either as a rental or a for sale property. But our very first property last year that the Wabash County Development Corporation was the developer on was a property in North Manchester. And so once we purchased it, we needed a contractor, right? And so we got a couple different bids from various contractors and came across you, James, with Creedence Contracting, and we're able to work on that property in North Manchester, get it renovated and sold at an attainable price point to a new family that was moving from Illinois into the community in North Manchester, and really revitalized an area like the initiative is set out to do, right? Finding neighborhoods in our community, existing properties, as opposed to building brand new out in a cornfield, right? Finding existing neighborhoods and improving the area one property at a time, right? Which raises values of all properties in the area. And so, James, that was a great experience for all of us, right?
Yeah,
We were
sure.
kind of building the plane as we were flying it, right? With this first kind of project. But now you're in the middle of another property for the development corporation, looking at another property. And so now it's just continuing to snowball, right? And grow. But one thing that I think has worked out really well between the Wabash County Development Corporation, whose board is made up of entrepreneurs, business people in the county, Conner and I, with kind of our entrepreneurial spirit of our approach to combating some of the problems we face in our community, pair that with you and Creedence Contracting, right? And so this is a new organization, a new initiative that we're definitely building the plane while it's flying. Bring on a construction partner whose story is very similar to how you built your business and the passion and the energy that you have. Get into how Creedence Contracting came to be in that story.
Well, I can't remember exactly. I got a call from one of you guys to do it, and we met, and I was quickly asking questions. What's a development corporation? Because I had no idea.
It was early in your time of really getting involved in the community.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Of your company doing a variety of different things, which we'll get to also of all the things that you guys do in the community. But it was towards that.
But I started asking a bunch of questions, and I'll summarize it this way. I quickly fell in love with the initiative of the development corporation because I, in my own testimony, outside of, the business side of me, the personal side of me, can completely relate to how difficult it is starting out, building a life, building a provision, building a family from nothing, and how difficult it is to find a property that's affordable for starting out. First-time home buyers, the condition of the market, it's either so high that you can't afford it, or you're forced to rent. And the rental, economy, the rental market's booming. And so I quickly fell in love with your guys' initiative, and I quickly believed in what you guys were doing. I think, what was the number? Like there's 1,100?
Yeah, 1,100, according to the Indiana Housing Community Development Authority, 1,100 vacant properties in Wabash County.
Yeah, yeah. I rented houses for 10 years. And it's easier when you're a W-2. Being an entrepreneur, the loops you have to, or the hoops you have to jump through in order to get a lending agency to look at you, it's a challenge in itself. But I quickly realized that, man, there really is a need for this. And building new houses is great, but I know very well the market and the expense of building new houses and what they have to be sold for, which eliminates a huge demographic of people.
That's right.
And so I was like, this is awesome. If we, have the ability to partner with you guys and to flip houses and provide opportunities for younger families or people who, work steady jobs but can't afford a $2,000 monthly payment to provide a nice home for them, we're all in. And so the first one, it was a guinea pig. It was a learning experience for both of us. The second one that we're on, it's going so smooth, and we believe in it. We believe in creating housing for the lower to middle class people who are doing their best to do something for their family. And everybody knows, that is like the foundational. It's still very secular, but the foundational thing that everybody aspires to have is to have a place to call home. And so if we're able to create that opportunity for families, we're all in. And so we quickly fell in love with your guys' mission, and we quickly not only grew our business relationship, but, our friendship, and it's working really well. And we're excited to continue to scale this with you guys. This is one of several opportunities our company has to impact our community, which I know that you preluded this question with, that we're going to get into our mission, but this is a great point, that our mission is to connect communities to Christ. And we are carpenters connecting communities to Christ. And, this is just one of the ways that we can help our community. Buying a house isn't necessarily, it's not a spiritual act. But if we could do that and provide an opportunity for a family, and also, witness to them or talk to them about Jesus or pray with them, or just even, show them the love and kindness that our company represents, we're still doing kingdom work. And this is just one of the many ways that God has created opportunities for us to help our community grow.
Yeah, and I would just push back a little bit maybe on the comment about how building a house, buying a house may not be a spiritual experience. I would say that construction and home building and renovation projects get a bad rap because of, one, it's gotten so expensive, right? And it can be a very painful process for folks, right? We are very fortunate to have a lot, you all being one, of great construction companies in Wabash County, but there's projects that often don't go right, and not everybody operates with the level of integrity that you all do, and honesty and trustworthiness. And whether it's something as small as your crew always having a smile on their face when they're working and being polite and keeping a job site clean, or it's things as large as budgetary items, right? And being honest about budgetary items. Those things aren't always common in construction, right? So I would push back and just say that the construction experience, and when you're working with customers, whether it's us with the development corporation or an individual on their own project, that is a spiritual experience, right? And what the values that you all carry through is 100% important and is at the core of who you all are.
Yeah, and I think stewardship. I'm just thinking of how many people have desired to have a home but have made a poor financial decision to buy a home that they necessarily couldn't afford. That's poor stewardship. So we're creating an opportunity for people to buy a home and steward their money well, which I do retract that comment. That it very much, it very much is wise to spend your money in a way that glorifies God. And so we're creating opportunities for families to purchase a home, to buy a home, to start their family, to grow a family, and not put themselves in a poor financial decision. So I agree with you 100%.
Conner and I've talked about this before, and I've shared this with you before, that I personally, I won't speak for Conner, but I know he feels similarly, look up to you and how you have started your business, run your business with faith, right? And how you bring others to Christ through the work that you do, and just how you communicate about that. That is not easy nor common, right? There's a lot of Christian entrepreneurs out there. There's a lot of businesses that have to separate or choose to separate, right? The faith component from what they do every single day. But as you just mentioned, it's in your mission statement, right? And so talk to the listener how Creedence was formed and how that became such a core piece of who you are and who Creedence Contracting is.
Yeah. Well, I got to be honest. I've always loved the Lord. There's no doubt about that. But when I started Creedence, it wasn't for the right reasons. I started it for my own glory. There was times where, and if I'm being completely honest, and this is all part of my testimony, and I don't think anybody should be ashamed of the lessons, the hard lessons to be learned in life. I think we should talk about them because it sheds light for other people to, learn from our mistakes. But when I started Creedence, it was for my own glory. It was because I idolized, big house, big property, nice things. And it just seemed like at every corner that I met a roadblock. And there was a time about 2 years into Creedence where it was down to just me and one other guy. And I seriously considered throwing in the towel. And it was in that time where I just said, Lord, okay, I don't want to keep doing things this way. What God builds, he can tear down. What God gives, he can take away. And I felt, we were just one bad decision or one moment away from him taking away Creedence. And it was at that moment where I just surrendered. I said, Lord, you know what? And really, I read the book of Ecclesiastes. There's a lot of things, a lot of small moments in that season of my life where I said, okay, this isn't working. I'm going to do something different. Lord, he humbled me greatly. I mean, humbled me. And it was in that moment I said, okay, Lord, I don't want this to be about me anymore. I don't want this to be about my own gain anymore. I want this to be about you. And when you surrender to the Lord, he puts in you a new mind, a new heart, new motives, new intentions. And I'm a living testimony of that. And everything that we did from that point forward, it was me and Tommy. He's been with me through thick and thin. But everything we did at that point was for God's glory. It wasn't about our own glory. And that was the moment when the whole trajectory of our company started changing. The right men came along. The right godly men came along. The right opportunities started creating themselves. And so by putting Christ at the front of it, God can now use it to bear fruit, to spread the gospel. And a lot of people have all sorts of things to say, and that's fine. Let them. I do every day. But it says, whatever you do, do it in the name of the Lord Jesus. And people think that this is a marketing ploy for gaining, business, but they're wrong. This is a strategy for us to show people the love of Christ. And God is using it to not only bless the families involved with Creedence, but countless other people. And we see every day. And that's part of the community events that you referenced to earlier, is we have just seen how much God can do when you surrender to him and you stop doing things for your own gain. You do it for his glory. He will bless you, because at the end of the day, he's a jealous God. You know, he will tear down any idol, and he does. But because we have partnered with God and are doing this for his glory, we're able to, he's doing exceedingly more than we could have ever hoped or imagined. And so by doing that, every decision we make it as a team. You know, I'm just blessed to be the owner. That's it. That's my title. Our team of men, of godly men, we make decisions together. I don't make any decisions without seeking, advice from them first. It's not about any one of us anymore. It's about us as a team and our mission to connect communities to Christ. And God has created so many cool opportunities for us to do that.
I was just going to ask, James, that's something that I absolutely love about your company. Any job you go on, your guys work with the same passion and energy every single time. And so can you talk a little bit just about that culture that you've built there, and what are the things you do to bond the group together through Christ?
Yeah.
Because it's clear that everybody's centered in it.
And that's not common, right? We talk about it. It doesn't happen overnight.
No, I've been a part of, again, I've been on job sites where the crew doesn't talk or hang out or talk about those types of things. But yeah, your crew is definitely different. Same faces around every time, and just a great group of guys.
Yeah, and again, it was an act of surrender and God taking the reins of Creedence Contracting that even made that type of culture, that type of atmosphere possible. Every testimony of every guy that works for Creedence, it wasn't us putting out an ad, we're hiring. And I wish all my guys were here, because I love them when they share their own testimony. But every single time one of the guys joined Creedence, it was such a divine, inexplicable circumstance where it just happened. And I can't explain it any way other than that. But one thing that's cool is that all the guys, we all love Jesus. We do. And we're not all on the same,
different parts of the journey.
Yeah, we're on different parts of the journey. But one thing that we do to maintain that is we put Christ on the forefront of it. And when you do that, there's a certain level of accountability that you have to revere, that you have to respect. Other than that, set yourself up for failure. And so if we're saying we love Jesus, if we're carpenters connecting the communities to Christ, there's a certain level of accountability that we have to maintain in our everyday mundane moments to point people to Christ. Because if not, then we're doing the opposite. We're tarnishing his name. And we all have a healthy fear of the Lord. And we understand that together collectively as a team by Bible studies that we do every week, by team building days. We spend a lot of the time together off the job site, just sharing, connecting, praying, studying. And that's so important, because it really sets the bar for how we know we are supposed to operate as Christian men, especially when we're doing it publicly. And so we all are like-minded in our ideal. We're all like-minded in our passion to spread the gospel and to share the love of Jesus. And we're all like-minded in making sure that not only our business lives, but our personal lives, that we uphold we all fall short still. We're all sinners. We still make mistakes. I'm 100% still a human, and the guys here, but we do our best to put Christ first and to continuously grow in the direction of righteousness. And so, yeah, I hope that answered your question.
I think it did. James, you talked about at a point in Creedence early on in Creedence Contracting, getting down to you and one other guy.
Yeah.
What does the crew look like today? How many folks do you have? And contracting's a broad brush, right? So what all do you specifically do versus what do you self-perform versus subbing out, just for the listener that may not be familiar with the company?
Yeah, so we have 2 crews right now. We have 2 crews. We have 8 guys total at this point in time. We have 2 crews. We have 5 guys, boots on the ground, swinging hammers. And then we have 3 guys, including myself, full-time in the office. This is part of kind of what I mentioned earlier in this podcast, is we're transitioning into more of a contracting business. But as of right now, we're running 2 crews. And so I want to be careful on how much I disclose at this point in time. But if you follow us in our journey on Facebook, over the next few months, you're going to get a first row, first-hand look at what God is doing with this company and the direction that we're heading. But again, right now we have 2 crews and we have 3 guys in the office who are working every day to redevelop, build the system and processes to take Creedence to a whole different level.
And you were founded in what year?
2020
Okay.
is when we
Wow.
started.
So still
5
young
years.
company.
Yeah, 5.5 years old.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Mostly single family residential projects right now, light
Yeah.
commercial projects.
There, every once in a while we get an opportunity to do like commercial. Our experience would allow for us to do like commercial, but right now we are pretty much 98% residential. And we love that. We love that because one of the coolest consistent ways God uses us is in the homes of our customers. People just see, a difference, and it's Christ that's within us. Again, I'm not pointing any glory to us. Trust me, it is not. But people see a difference in how we act and how we speak, how we conduct ourselves, the joy that we have that is on display on all of our job sites. And it opens up so many opportunities for conversations. I don't know how many times we have, prayed with customers, wept with customers. And it's cool because in God's sovereignty, somehow he brings people to us that need that love, that need that joy in their life. And I have so many testimonies of God's faithfulness in that. When you truly surrender and you truly give whatever you do in word or in deed, but whatever you do it in the name of Jesus, God will use you. And there's no better gift. I could have a $10 million company, a 20. I don't care about that. What I care about is just the opportunities to see God at work. And I'm so humbled. And I think I speak on behalf of our team. We are so humbled to consistently be used by God in situations where people get to see him and not us. And I wish I had the time to just really dive into some of those things, but God is faithful. And so the biggest piece of advice I have is give it to him and just sit back and watch what he can do. And I'm a living testimony of that. I will take it to my grave that this is not me, gentlemen. This has nothing to do with my abilities and God's sovereignty. He's, built my character and made me and the guys that work for me to the men that we are. But because we truly have a heart, the world looks at the outward appearance, but God sees the heart, because God sees the heart of myself and the men at work and how much we love him and how much we want to serve him. He has taken the reins and continuously proves his goodness, his grace, his mercy, and his faithfulness in our lives. And trust me, there's nothing better than that. I want to end with this. When I mentioned earlier that the book of Ecclesiastes completely changed my perspective, is if you think about it, since the beginning of time, there's been entrepreneurs, whether it be bartering, trading, business owners. There's been billion-dollar companies made. There's been, small town businesses built. There's been success. There's been failure. It's been done time and time and time again. I watched something today. In 100 years, the houses that we're renovating, somebody else is going to live in. They're going to need updated again. The newer truck that you work so hard to buy, in 30 years, it's going to be a pile of metal in a scrapyard. None of it matters. It doesn't matter. You could have 100 acres of land. You could have everything that your heart desires, and none of it matters. Give us some time. None of it matters. Moth and decay will destroy. We leave everything behind no matter what when we die. But this is like the summary of the book of Ecclesiastes. None of it matters. Everything under the sun, it's been done. It'll be done again. It's been done before. It doesn't matter. But if you do it for God's glory, and if you do it for the advancement of his kingdom, it has eternal value that will never go away. Will never go away. And so whatever you do, Colossians 3:17, whatever you do, whether it be in word or in deed, do it all in the name of Lord Jesus, giving thanks to the Father for it through him. Every good thing comes from God. And so that's what we do. We're not here to build a 6-7 figure business. We're here to lead people to Christ. And I got asked a question by somebody, what does it look like for Creedence to be successful? And the answer to my question is so much as one person, and I truly mean this, as so much as one person surrenders their life to Christ and repents and gains eternity in heaven with our Lord and Savior because of our testimony, because of our boldness, because of our faith, which comes with plenty of persecution. I mean, you look at, if you have any awareness or knowledge of the Bible, the truth, people who are I want to tread lightly here. People hate the truth who don't know the truth. And so it comes with plenty of persecution. But what defines success for Creedence is so much as one soul is saved because of our boldness in Christ and because of us being willing to surrender ourselves to Christ. And I consider that a success because that has eternal value. So,
Boom.
yeah.
There you have it. There you have it. Man.
I wanted to say, so one question that I do get asked is where did the word Creedence Contracting, it's not Davis Construction or JD, but Creedence. So when my dad and we were sitting out and we were trying to come up with a name, and we were thinking of different business names because, you start a business, you got to have a name. Creedence actually started with, how you spelled it wrong. That's originally was the name of our company. It was Creedence spelled with an E. And we were looking in the thesaurus. We wanted a business name that gave meaning.
That's a throwback, a thesaurus.
Yeah,
Man.
yeah, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Google it, kids, if you don't know what a
Coming
thesaurus
from a
is.
guy who hated textbooks too.
Yeah, right. Well, for some reason, I remember bits and pieces of random information, scholastic information. Anyways, so a thesaurus, we were looking up words that we wanted people to, our business name to have meaning. And if you look at the word Creedence, some synonyms for that is honorable, trustworthy, reliable, committed. And so we love the way it sounded, Creedence Contracting. But when we were developing our business model and our slogan, we knew that we wanted to have a business creed, which it's since changed, but originally the word creed is CREED, and an acronym is committed, reliable, effective, efficient, determined. And so we'll just add an E in there. It looks better, it looks cooler, and it ties everything together. So Creedence, that's where it kind of originated from. But since then, we got rid of our slogan being committed, reliable, effective, efficient, determined. During that stage where we surrendered and we gave the company to God for him to use for his glory, is Carpenters Connecting Communities to Christ. And everything we do is for that reason right there.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
For explaining that. We appreciate that.
I just wanted to say one thing that we do, part of our Connecting Communities to Christ, is we like to bring our community together. And we have been so blessed to have the trust and to have the platform to have other business owners in our community, in the North Manchester community where we've located. And eventually we want to, it's not connecting a community to Christ, it's connecting communities, but we got to start where we're our home, where we're located. But we've had the opportunity to partner with several other businesses and host these community events. And so coming up this year, if you guys want to meet us, if you want to meet other businesses who are like-minded, who aren't afraid to put Jesus on display, then we have a couple events coming up this year. Again, if you follow our Facebook or our social media pages, we'll be updating you guys with that. But this spring, we're having a community cookout. Last year we did it. We had almost 800 people show up, 500 pounds of pulled pork, 80 pounds of coleslaw. Yeah, we had...
Back up 1 second. 800 people.
800 people.
500 pounds of pulled pork.
Yeah.
80 pounds of coleslaw.
Yeah, and 120 pounds of potato salad too.
I can't stand coleslaw.
Well, you got to go to Manchester Marketplace, man. That stuff is lit. It's good. It's good stuff.
I've never heard Manchester Marketplace.
You're appealing to all audiences. You use lit in the podcast episode and thesaurus.
Hey,
so you're just bringing
buddy, I was born
in
1995. I got a little bit of, old school in me and a little bit of new school in me. I'm well-rounded.
There you go.
But anyway, so we have community events coming up. We're going to do a community event at Ogan's Landing in North Manchester this spring, and then we always do the pie giveaway in the fall. And
Completely free?
Yeah, everything's free. Yeah. This isn't Creedence doing this. We just kind of help facilitate it. But all the businesses partner together to help fund it, to provide a free event for the community. And we have lots of other ideas too that may be taking place. So follow us on Facebook, follow our journey, and yeah, we'd love to meet you. If you have any questions, I'm an open book. I'd love to answer them. And yeah, thanks again for having me here today.
For our listeners, we'll be sure to drop the Facebook link and Creedence Contracting's website link in the show notes of this episode. So go check those out if you want to follow Creedence to stay up to date, not just on the events that James talked about, but all of the great work that you all are doing in our community. James, thank you from the community standpoint and getting to work with you on a lot of community initiatives. Thank you for all of the work. I can tell our listeners that James definitely is practicing what he preaches and is all the way through his organization. And so just appreciate your vulnerability,
Absolutely.
You sharing about your faith, your company, your values. I think that there's a lot that our listeners can get from this episode. And so your passion and energy is contagious. And so just from the community
Good.
side and from the podcast, thank you for agreeing to come on and share some of that with our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks to my beautiful wife who came with me today. And you guys got an hour of my rambling. She gets every day, all day of my endless rambling. So I'm glad she was here today with me too. So
Us too. And as usual, this podcast is made possible by the generous support from the Lisa Gilman Investment Fund, the Sandra Kunkel Trust, Mark and Amy Ford, Paperworks Industries, the City of Wabash, the Community Foundation of Wabash County, and Visit Wabash County. Until next time, I'm Alex Downard, and this is the Thrive in Wabash County podcast.